Hi, I'm Ariane. Welcome to Raising Our Voices, and here with me today are Lachlan and Luke. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you today?
Good.
Good.
Oh, good. And we're talking about the Metro Rail system today. Here we have Evan Tettersols from Melbourne Metro Rail. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. Good to be here. Hello to everyone.
Hello.
Okay, so we've invited you along here today to discuss the Metro Rail tunnel that's being built. Can you describe for our listeners a little bit about the project and why you're building it?
Yeah, sure. So the thing about this project is that, as you know, Melbourne's population is growing significantly and forecast
every
to
day.
grow because everyone loves Melbourne and they want to live here, and that's a good thing. But one of the consequences is that we need more and better public transport systems to move all those extra people around the city. And what we're doing is overcoming some of the challenges we have in the rail system at the moment. So our city loop is pretty much at capacity. You can't get more trains through it. And we've got a couple of key stations at North Melbourne and Richmond that are also real congestion points.
Yeah.
So by us building this tunnel, effectively it goes from South Kensington to South Yarra, and it's about 9 kilometres and 5 underground stations. What we do is we increase the capacity through the middle of the city by about 45% for rail, which is a massive uplift on the loop that's there at the moment.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And then what we do, we take the Dandenong line that currently runs around the loop and the Sunbury line that goes around the loop, we take them out of the loop and run them through our new tunnel.
The other way.
That does two things. That gives you a really good rail line all the way from Sunbury to Dandenong, but it takes two busy lines out of the loop, so it frees up space in the loop.
And it is about time we had underground stations going the other direction. It's good.
That's right. And these underground stations, they're located in, obviously, areas where there's a real need. In particular, the two in the city have underground direct connection. So one's very close to Melbourne Central, and there's a direct link underground from the new one to the existing, and the same down at near Flinders Street. There's an underground connection to Flinders Street station from the new one. Then we've got one up in Parkville where there's a huge demand up there with all the students and the medical facilities for a direct rail connection. And we've got one out to the west near West Melbourne there in Arden, and that's about revitalising an area where we can have more growth, more commercial, retail and residential opportunity. And then down to the south of the city near Domain, we've got another one down there that really helps for that area from a tourist perspective, from the commercial precinct along St Kilda Road.
And I understand that that's sort of near where Docklands is that right?
No, we don't
no.
actually go near Docklands with this one.
Yeah.
There is a future rail tunnel that is sort of in the longer term thinking at the moment that
That's
would
what
go
I'm
more near
thinking
the
of, yeah.
Docklands area, yeah. And that's actually just been brought to the public's attention in the last few days through the new Infrastructure Victoria body.
Sounds great. Lachlan, you have a question?
Yeah, like I know, experiencing this morning, I was talking to a woman this morning, like you were mentioning about the new stations. She was talking to me on the train. Apparently 3 wheelchairs couldn't get on the train because they were chockers already. And do you really think that's going to improve the solution, or is it going to put a band-aid solution or create bandage solution?
No, this project's a massive increase in capacity for Melbourne, which will help with the congestion that you were talking about with that lady this morning. But importantly, we're buying new trains. They're called high-capacity metro trains that are the latest international standard. And these trains are designed with more space within them, so you can get more people on them, effectively less seats. And we're designing these stations for these new trains. They'll be dedicated just to the line that runs between Sunbury and Dandenong initially, but in the longer term, more and more of these trains will be rolled out across Melbourne. But they definitely will help with both getting on and off the trains, where in the case of a wheelchair, and with space on the trains for people.
What about, so you're saying, Dandenong, so will that include for the SkyRail?
So there is another project happening at the moment where they're removing level crossings, and there are 9 of them to remove, and they'll all be removed before Melbourne Metro comes online, because in order to run more trains, and that's what we want to do with this project, you need to be able to not make the road crossings that are there at the moment any worse, because if we run more trains without doing these level crossing removals, you'll just have people backed up at boom gates longer and longer.
Yeah.
So you get rid of them first, then we can run more trains. It's a much more efficient solution.
And then, so will these high-capacity trains be running on the SkyRail before this project's finished?
They will. So they'll be rolled out progressively. The first of them start coming in 2019, I think. And they will, ultimately, there are 65 new trains to come.
So what brand?
Well, there's a contract that's in place at the moment for supplying those new trains, and there's an entity that's been got to the preferred stage.
So what brand?
There's no actual brand, but there are companies that build these trains.
Yeah, what company?
So the new trains it's not part of our works. It's part of a completely separate project. So I'd probably leave that for others to talk to, because they're in a negotiation stage, commercial negotiations at the moment.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to bring the attention to Luke for a moment because he has a question.
So we'll be starting works there. We've started works now, actually, in service investigations and minor relocations. But once we get our planning approvals in place, we'll be starting to build some fairly major works early next year. But ultimately, because this is a massive project, the end game where we'll be running the new services through the new tunnel will be 2026. So it's a long way off, but it's a big project. It takes a long time to build this infrastructure and then commission it and get it running in sync with the rest of the network.
Yeah.
So does that... sorry. Works.
So we've got the actual tunnel goes from South Kensington to South Yarra, and then we've got the 5 different stations. And where it runs is the tunnel comes in through North Melbourne and up to where Grattan Street intersects with Royal Parade. That's where one of our stations will be, right next to Melbourne Uni. Then we swing around and we come down to the top of the city, and the tunnel runs under Swanston Street, all the way down under the Yarra, and then pretty much follows St Kilda Road down as far as Toorak Road, and then heads off to the east towards South Yarra, running pretty much under Toorak Road.
Is it really?
So, sorry, Luke. So does that, we're going to do about tram lines and it, so they're going to be non-existent, or?
No, not non-existent, but we certainly help the tram network with this project, because at the moment there are a lot of trams that come up the Swanston Street, St Kilda Road spine, and by putting our new station at Domain, which is down just near St Kilda Road, there, sort of near the corner of Toorak Road and St Kilda Road, we're going to have a high change interchange there, high transfer interchange, where people coming up on a tram on St Kilda Road who might want to get to, say, Melbourne Uni or the medical precinct up in Parkville, and there's a lot of them, they'll get off the tram and on the train because it'll be much quicker to catch the train up to Parkville. So that'll enable us to take some of those tram services off St Kilda Road and make it a more efficient spine,
okay, I see.
and we'll move them to the west of Melbourne. So they'll serve, one will run up Spencer Street and probably others up Williams Street, and that helps better service the western part of Melbourne that really does need more tram services.
So again, is it going to affect Ross House?
So Ross House is on Flinders Lane, just
Yep,
near
that's
Swanston.
correct.
So what we'll be doing there is putting our major station works under Swanston Street. So we'll be accessing the station underground to build it from City Square. So we'll be having like a big building site in City Square, and we'll have a big building site at the back of Young and Jackson's, sort of behind Ross House. But we won't be directly impacting Ross House itself. And you'll be able to access in there, yes, there'll be truck movements and things, but it'll be a bit like having some big city building projects going on around you.
Right.
And we'll obviously make sure that access to your building, as there will be to many other buildings in the area, is maintained and supported.
That's great. Thanks for letting us know about that.
Yeah.
Now, as you said, you'll be, making the building site next to Ross House. I am of the understanding that you have to knock down Port Phillip Arcade to do that. So, how do you think that'll impact congestion in that area? Because currently it's a cut through for people to get to from Flinders Lane to Flinders Street. How do you think that'll impact?
Yep, so during construction, there's no question there will be an impact on how people move around that area. But we're going to manage that. We're going to make sure that we have alternative routes that are very clearly identified, so that people still have that accessibility that they have now, albeit there will be disruption. Can't avoid that. But the end game there is that there will be a station entry very close to that little precinct. So at the back of Ross House, you'll have either direct entry to the station in that little pocket behind Young and Jackson's, or over the road in City Square. So there'll be a big improvement for access there in the longer term.
I have one other question about Port Phillip Arcade. Obviously, there'll be people, businesses displaced because you'll be knocking that down. How do you aim to appease the owners of those businesses? Is that in the budget to do something for that?
Yes, it's certainly in the budget, but we've been talking to all of those owners and the tenants that are in Port Phillip Arcade, and there are a number of other businesses in that area that are also going to be, we call it acquired. The properties will be acquired, and because we need to make space to build these stations. So there is clear legislation there that enables us to work with those tenants and the owners to make sure that financially they're supported through this process.
Yes.
And we're talking to all of them regularly.
Yes, well, that's good. I thought you might use that legislation to help you with that.
Yeah, I'll comment. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Lachlan. We'll get back to you in a minute.
Yeah.
But we're just going to go to a music break now. You're listening to Raising Our Voices on 3CR Melbourne. Enjoy. We hope you enjoyed that song. Welcome back to Raising Our Voices. We're talking to Evan Tattersall from Metro Rail, and we're going to move on now to talking about accessibility of the project. Okay, so it sounds like there's a need for the project to be accessible during building and finishing. Can you tell us what level of what level of commitment the project will make to accessibility, and then we might ask you about specifics.
Sure. There are a lot of requirements that we need to comply with, which is pretty much a given. So there are federal acts, the Disability Discrimination Act. There are national standards, disability standards for accessible public transport. There are local standards that Public Transport Victoria require us to comply with. So all that is pretty much a given. But more importantly, that we've got a concept design at the moment. We're working through a process now where we're engaging contractors to help us deliver this thing. And these contractors have architects in their groups who have worked all over the world, throughout Europe, Asia, America. They are across the latest international standards that are being applied. These are some of the best contractors around the world, and we're going to use them and that experience to flesh out that detailed design to make sure that the access to these stations and around the precincts, not just in the stations themselves, are designed and delivered with accessibility in particular in mind.
Very good.
Sorry.
And are you going to aim for like the golden standard of accessibility, or are you just going to complete things you have to do like standard wise? So are you aiming to go above and beyond, or just meet the standards?
No, like I say, there are meeting the standards is a given, but we do want to go further than that. We want to make sure that what we deliver here is as good as is being delivered around the world, and there are some fantastic projects that are happening that we're drawing on for experience, like the Crossrail project in London. So it's a very similar project to what we're doing, where they're just finishing a new tunnel that goes right under the heart of London. And I think there are 10 new underground stations there. So our team and the contractor teams have all been over looking at what the latest and greatest best practice is internationally. So we definitely want to try and do better.
Okay, so guys, we've got a thing here about lifts and how they're never enough. Which one of you would like to ask the question about lifts? Lachlan?
Yeah, I noticed in Parliament there's only 2 lifts, and then coming up to street level, or 1 lift, then you've got another lift going down to 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4. How many more lifts are you going to have on these other stations?
The detail of how many lifts and that is still being worked through. That's something that we'll work through with our contractors as they do the detailed design. But like I say, we are complying with all the required standards, and we're aware of some of the constraints in some of the existing stations. So we want to make damn sure that we do better than that. But exactly how many lifts and where is really dependent on the final design solution, on how you get people up and out of these stations. But we take your point, and we'll certainly be focused on making sure that there is enough lifts there.
Sorry, and what about space? Because I've got a red trailer or tow behind me for work, and I can, it's doable on the current stations, but if there's more than enough people, I can't. There's never a time when I've knocked into someone or so are they, how big are they going to be
Roughly.
roughly?
The actual lift size, you mean?
Yep, that's right.
Well, again, these lifts are designed to the latest international standards. The exact dimensions I'm not familiar with, but they do vary depending on the load, the number of people that are going up at a particular station. But I've got to say that all of the design, from how someone gets off a train onto the platforms, up to concourse level and up to street level, is all being designed with efficient access in mind for people who are in wheelchairs and other, in the aged, the infirm, to make sure that it's the most direct route and that we maximise the space for people moving around and getting into lifts.
So, because I'm vision impaired also, I almost forgot to say that. What are you going to do in regards to vision impaired people? Are they going to, because I know people, when give them a new area and it's like they're in a foreign country and then imagine being blind, no sight, not knowing where you are. So what are you going to be working with the likes of Vision Australia and
So organisations like Vision Australia are involved with establishing the standards, like with Public Transport Victoria.
Yep.
We've got expertise within our design team at the moment that have developed the designs to a concept level. The contractors who ultimately deliver these works will also have specialists in this area to make sure that what gets designed and then ultimately built takes into account the issues that you're talking about. And it's not just your situation; it's others who are where special lighting is needed to make sure that areas are clear.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so that's all a process that will happen with the right expertise.
On the same thing about lighting, but for people with disabilities, we have Luke wants to ask you a question.
We are very concerned about minority and how safe will it be.
This is during construction, you think? Yeah. So that's a fair question, because when we build this major infrastructure, there's a lot of impact on surrounding areas in managing pedestrians along the footpaths, and we will make sure that as the project evolves and we change things like the hoardings that surround the construction areas, that the lighting and the clear passage along the footpaths and even the level of the footpaths, making sure we're not having steps in the wrong place, all of that will be taken into account, not just with a view to the general public, but also to accessibility for people with disabilities.
Lifts are very small at Southern Cross Station.
Well, Southern Cross Station doesn't come under my jurisdiction, but I'm aware that there's certainly a focus on Southern Cross because the number of people coming into that station has grown enormously, and they are looking at ways to develop that and the areas outside the station to manage that growth. So I would think that is taken into account as part of that process.
But what we mean by that, I think what Luke is trying to say is, how are you going to learn from those mistakes at Southern Cross and make sure that that sort of thing doesn't happen at these new stations? How are you going to use that as a learning experience?
Yep, I hear your point. And as I said before, we're aware of various constraints around Melbourne's stations, but in particular we are learning from not just local experience but international experience, making sure what we build here is as good as it is around the world. So we will take all that into account, and that will be sorted through in the detailed design.
And I just wanted to bring something up with you. For example, Parliament only has one lift to get down to the actual platforms, and if that lift is broken, no one with any sort of disability can often access that, because even people with stuff like chronic fatigue syndrome can't walk down the stairs. How, like, do you plan to put more than one lift in from street level?
So generally, yes, is the answer. We call it redundancy, where if one lift or escalator is out of service, you make sure that there are others that can manage people. But the detail of that, as I said before, will depend on the final design, how many people are coming up in which exit or which entry, and that'll be designed accordingly.
So how are you going to actually check that the construction meets the needs of people with disabilities?
Yep, so we certainly will have our own expert advisors following us through the whole process, the journey, where we have contractors who will be producing designs that they put to us for review, and then our own people who make sure that what is ultimately finalised in the detailed design is in fact built to the required standards. So we'll be following that as the authority all the way through to the end.
And is there any way that people can give feedback to you guys or suggestions on the project?
Yep, we'll be having, we've got to get through our formal planning process that's underway at the moment, through an environmental effects statement process, which is due to finalise by early next year, where we get our planning approvals in place. But once that happens, we'll be progressively throughout next year forming precinct groups and community reference groups, where we and the contractor that ultimately builds the work will work with the local community and the local businesses and stakeholders to go that next level, where you start developing detail, so that understanding what it is we're building and how we're going to build it. So there'll be that point of contact with the community and associations such as yours progressively throughout the job. So yes, you'll have opportunity to talk through and understand what we're doing.
That's great. That's fantastic. We really appreciate that chance to talk about it.
Thank you for coming in today.
You're most welcome. Thanks, guys, for having me here. It's been great to be able to talk to you and let you know a bit about what we're doing. I hope to see you again.
And thank you from the whole team.
Thank you.
Here at Raising Our Voices. And I'd also like to thank my co-host, Luke and Lachlan.
Thank you.
See you, everyone. We'll see you next time on Raising Our Voices on Wednesday, November 9th at 6 p.m. Next up, Tamil Voices. Enjoy.